Call the meeting to order at 2:08. And present Jennifer Bragg, Chairman, and Michael Erisman. And Dina.
Yes.
Thank you, Dina. Michael, if it's okay with you, what I would like to do is basically summarize the concept that Graham left on the table last week. I've read the additional materials and have two counter proposals for consideration, and hopefully we can, come to a consensus on the mayor and council compensation, and then move on to the I think there are 3 or 4 other issues that we need to address. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
Okay, so first of all, historically, we had gotten probably 6 weeks ago, I think maybe before I went away, we got to 53,000 for the mayor's salary by averaging 8 comparable cities. Then subsequently, I think based on the fact that Snoqualmie is not average by any metric of those cities, that it in fact leads the pack. Graham kind of revisited and came to a different proposal. He had a different proposal. The proposal that Graham made at our last session was to take the 4 highest paid mayors from the pack of 8 that we began with, throw out the high and the low, and then average the remaining 2. And if you do those, if you follow that process, you eliminate Edgewood and I forget who the other one with the low was, probably Bonnie Lake. You eliminate Edgewood and Bonnie Lake. No, I'm sorry, if you take the 4 highest, that's correct. You end up with Arlington at 85 and Monroe and North Bend at 48. That's an average of 66.5. And that's where what Graham had tentatively proposed at our last meeting. Perhaps there is some merit to that. It's certainly true that Snoqualmie is above average, and it's also true looking at the survey, the salary survey of our employees, that our senior managers are at the very top of the 75th percentile for comparable cities. So, there's some merit, I think, to that, among other merits to Graham's approach. Among other merits is that it excludes Edgewood, which is a big outlier in the salary ranges, because its mayor is also city administrator. Correct. So it makes sense to eliminate Edgewood for this purpose, and Graham's approach does that. A big downside that I see there is that it's an increase of 84%, and that's huge. So I would like to talk today about 2 other possibilities. The first is keeping the 8 municipalities data set that we began with, toss the highest and the lowest, being Edgewood and Bonnie Lake, and then go with the next highest and lowest, which would be Arlington and Camas, and average them. Arlington is 85. Camas, is that how you say it? Camas is 35. So you average those 2 and you come up at 60,000. And that's an increase of 67%. You may want to check my math on that, because math is not my thing, but I think that's an increase of 67%. So that's another possibility. An additional possibility would be to discard Edgewood and then take the high and low of all of the remaining 7. So we just take Edgewood out of the data set entirely because it's such an outlier, and then take the highest and the lowest of the remaining 7. And if you do that, you get to, it's 110,000 divided by 2, it's 55,000. And that would be an increase of 52%, I think, in the mayor's salary. I think, basically that you could make an argument for any of those 3 methodologies, and they bring you in, any of the 3 bring you in within the 75th percentile of comparable cities, which makes sense because that's where our senior managers are. So I guess, I just throw those 3 possibilities out there and ask for your response, your reaction to them. Do any of them have appeal?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that we were looking at. When we look at the comparable cities, I think that makes some sense, although it's a little bit apples and oranges, but I understand the methodology and how we got there. I also understand Graham's methodology as well. However, that's taking a 0 starting point and coming up with something brand new. And so I feel like the other part that we need to think through is the historical component of this and the level of change component. So I think that if we were to split the difference between what Graham is suggesting, which is a radical departure of what the city council and the city has had over the last 10, 12 years, and is actually changing the criteria now entirely on how we view these roles, I thought that was a little out of scope for where we are. I think that could be a conversation that should be had in the future. I didn't think it was within our scope to do that.
What do you mean changing the, tell me again what you think we're changing.
So we arrived originally, the city, I have to look at this as a building block because I was also on the team that did this last time. And as we looked at this last time, what we were instructed to do was look at relative compensation related to other comparable cities, not relook at how these roles are structured within the city. For example, we did not connect in any way, shape, or form these elected roles with unelected roles. There was no comparison. Those were apples and oranges. Those were entirely different things arrived at from a completely different data set and a completely different perspective. So within the constructs of what we had to work with, there was strict instructions to literally not do that. So I think what we're doing here is we're now sort of kind of going down the path a little bit of saying we should be looking at data that's not relevant to what we were asked to do. So we were not asked to look at city employees and how city employees compare, because those are completely different processes. Those are contract negotiations. Those are funded in a different way. Those serve a different purpose. And it's separate from what we were asked to do. So I feel like if I put too much emphasis on conflating those 2 aspects of it, then it takes me down a different path. So if I look simply at, let's leave all city employees out for a second, because their pay relative to what the elected officials get paid is not relevant, at least in my mind. Then I go back to how big of a jump do we want to make, and relative to other cities that are structured in similar ways. So I thought the original agreement that we had, which was a 50% increase, which I still think is a pretty significant increase over, now you could say it's over a 4-year period instead of over a 2 years. So if you average it over 4 years, it's 12.5% increase per year over the last 4 years, because we made no adjustment the last time we did this. And so we're now looking at 12.5% per year, roughly, to get where we are today, which seems pretty aggressive. And so I don't know that I'd be comfortable pushing beyond that. because I think that in pushing beyond that, now I've actually reset a bar in a completely different spot. And I didn't think it was in our purview to do that. So that was my disagreement with Graham's approach, is that I thought he pulled in data that wasn't relevant.
Well, although he didn't pull in, the only data he pulled in were the comparable cities. He
Well,
didn't.
actually,
He didn't use.
He was looking at city employees' data, and city employees are governed by a completely different process than the mayor and the city council are. So
Actually, I was going to take responsibility for doing that, for pulling in because I was the one who came up with 75th percentile. And only because I looked at that, that set of data and noticed the comp level of the senior managers. Because I don't think the 75th percentile was in Graham's original thinking.
So if we were to take the 75th percentile, when we look at all the comparable cities, if you take out the high and the low, and how many cities we were looking at as a comparison group was, I believe, was it 8 or 10?
8, right. And you come up anywhere between 48 and 85. If you look at
percentile, right?
Yeah, if you go with the 75th percentile, if you use that to validate your methodology here, you would come up with you could protect a number between 48 and 85. So again, I don't think it's that useful, but
so my sense is that given the amount of increase that we are proposing, which is over 50%, and you look at the overall economic environment that we're in, is pushing that up to 75 to 80%, something that's politically makes sense? It doesn't feel like it does.
Well, I think that's clearly true of an increase to 66.5. And then I guess the question is, it does seem to me that there is, it is quite clear that under the leadership of the mayor and the council, Snoqualmie continues to make huge strides in every metric. So I think there is, a justification for rewarding that. I think that's, you're seeing that reward play out with the employees, that senior level. So carrying it, through to those who oversee the process, has some appeal to me. At least I think it's certainly merited. It's justifiable.
Right. And I would agree. I'm 100% in agreement with you. And that's why I think if we were to go back to the public and say, as a result of that, we are recommending a 55% compensation increase. Mm-hmm. That certainly bears out the fact that what they oversee in terms of comparable salaries across other Washington cities that are similar size and scope, I think we can justify that. So I think what originally was proposed to me seemed very aggressive, but I can understand the logic of how we got there. And I think I could defend it if I needed to in a public setting. But I think pushing beyond that,
right,
one fell swoop seems like it's a little bit out of bounds, and I feel less comfortable about doing that.
Yeah, and I agree with you with that. Right. Well, then let's keep that thought that that perhaps coming in, it would still be within the 75th percentile, because that's a broad range that we've got there. But coming in at an increase of 52%, which would mean salary of 55. Let's think of that and move on to the benefits questions before we circle back to council
So my original proposal had us at 48 for mayor, and the new proposal is 55 for mayor. And based on the rationale provided, I can support that.
All right. Okay, then let's talk then about, well, shall we move to council first?
So I would assume that what we would do is apply the same logic to the council as well. So if that is what percentage increase is that? If we applied that same percentage increase to the council, we would end up where exactly? We're at
way high.
we're at 750 today.
Yeah, I'm doing annual numbers. So do you have any annual numbers in front of you? So
I'm gonna just get my calculator.
right now it's 9,000. Yeah.
So 750 times 12. Yeah, it's 9,000.
Okay. Let me just, if we talk comparables, this was a shock to me. Arlington, way up there at 22,000. So
Yeah,
again, I would regard them
were
as an outlier.
They were a total outlier. But if you look at some other ones, Monroe, Mount Lake Terrace is 950, which is about 12,000. You've got Monroe at 900.
Monroe's 11,000, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be, so then if
Bonnie
you look,
Lake is at 10. I was thinking now, without applying the, X percent, I don't know that we want to try to apply the same percentage to both groups, only because in the past, they have not moved in lockstep, like the mayor gets an increase one year, the council the next year. And so, that it hasn't been the pattern. But it seemed to me to try to come in
well, to
somewhere
put
between.
Yeah, Issaquah's at 15,000.
Issaquah's at 15. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have Issaquah in our numbers for some reason, but yeah, it seemed to me that coming in somewhere between 11 and 12 made sense. That is slightly better than a 20% increase.
By 12, so that'd be 916. If you made it 900, that puts us in line with a lot of other jurisdictions. That's 10,800. That's about 11. 900 puts us, very much in line with what we see in Mount Lake Terrace, Monroe, and then you got a city like Woodinville's only 500, right? So there's some quite a bit of variance here, but I'd be comfortable with taking it up to 900. Okay.
Yeah, that's about a little less than a 20% increase.
Mm-hmm. And because I do think that the burden individually on council members is much, much less than the mayor.
Yep. Okay, now, and then the pro tem. Right now, that's $100 a month is what the pro tem I think is bonused. We take that up.
Sure. I mean, you could do the same. You could run the same scenario and take it to 125 or 150.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Okay. Okay, and I think that works really well. And again, I know you're not so crazy about the 75th percentile thing, but I kind of like it as a supportive argument that, basically our senior staff managers have, their work plus the oversight of council and mayor taking us to the stellar position we find ourselves in today. So that the, kind of equivalent compensation among the three groups makes sense to me.
I can support that. That makes sense.
Can we then, I guess, a question for you, Dina. First of all, are the mayor and council paid as employees or 1099?
Employees.
They are definitely employees. Okay. Now, so my next question is, right now, I think they are eligible for mileage and per diems, although they do not use them apparently.
As far as I know, they don't.
Okay. But we do pay for like registrations for conferences and things like that. So is there any need to address this issue of mileage and per diem? Should we say that in making these salary recommendations or decisions, it's with the understanding that this is all in and there's no mileage or per diems included in compensation any longer? Does that make sense?
We would not be changing that, correct? This would be, we would be following what is currently in place and just not altering it.
No, they are now eligible, but not using, apparently.
Then I would leave it the same, that they continue to be eligible, but not use. I can't imagine how much mileage we'd be talking about here.
Yeah, that's true. We all live in Snoqualmie, so we're nearby the valley.
You know, I mean, I think, and I think I wouldn't, because it's the devil's in the fine print here, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that we make a change to any policy. We are just going to increase the relative salaries within the same structure we have today.
Okay. All right, good. Next issue is, well, COLA.
And I would say, given we're on a 2-year cycle and not a 4-year cycle, I would say no COLA.
No COLA for 24. Let the next commission worry about that.
Correct. Correct. Because what you would normally do with the COLA is you would basically take what we've decided and you'd step them there. You'd say, you know, you're going to get half of it the first year and half the second year. And that's the adjustment that we're going to make. So where you're going to end up is what we've decided. What we're going to do is just give it to them all up front immediately. And so then I think the next commission can look at it in 2 years.
Mhm.
If you go look at our contracts, the labor contracts that the city employees are under, they don't have COLAs, do they? I imagine they're just on a schedule that says what the rates will be per year, correct?
I know that in the last budget cycle, the COLAs were embedded in the projection, in the budget,
And the salary schedules.
in the salary schedules. Yeah.
They're usually looked at yearly.
Yeah.
So
So
there is a COLA.
given where we are, I'm, you know, normally as I've done this, you know, in private sector, you'd look at COLAs where you think there's going to be a large variability in living expenses, you know, currency fluctuations, high inflation, or rapid changing fluctuations, higher increased cost of housing. I think what we're seeing right now is the kind of the opposite of that, right? With the higher interest rates, housing prices are stagnant or dropping, and inflation seems to be level. So unless you see a particular reason to throw an automatic, you know, 7-8% increase for next year.
Certainly not 7 or 8%. I did notice that the biennial budget for 24 does a 2.5% increase for other employees. And I will also say, I noticed that in looking at the municipalities that I looked at, the ones I was assigned to, everybody did COLAs. I don't think there was anyone who was not. Now, they were in the previous cycle when we were in the middle of the pandemic, there were no COLAs at all. But in this cycle, at least all of my communities. Oh, wait, except Bonnie Lake. No, wait a minute. For 23 was no, they're on a different cycle.
Yeah,
but I
given that we're probably, you know, 20 months away from doing this again. It doesn't seem like one would be warranted given the real high increase that we're proposing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a substantial increase. Yeah, I think I can get behind that. Do we know yet whether, did the Teamsters finalize their contract yet? Do you know?
No.
All right, can we move on to health insurance?
Yeah,
Um,
did we get because the discussion that we had last time on health insurance was something I thought completely unrelated to our decision, and it was more around the carrier itself. So is there any interest in benefits? Was that even put on the table?
I mean, among the elected officials?
Right.
Or-
So I believe what we said was this would apply only to the mayor.
Right.
Council
And then the
members.
question was, is that possible?
It is.
It is possible?
Mhm.
Oh, that's interesting, because reading it, it says elected officials as a group. Okay, so that's was my first question.
So we're part of the pool, the AWC pool, and to change the master agreement we have with them, they would, whatever the salary commission decides, they would incorporate into offering.
I wonder why
benefits.
the mayor's eligible, but the council is subject to a 50% rule. That's interesting. I wonder where that 50% rule originated. I don't know. Well, frankly, my instinct coming in was just to leave it alone. They're eligible, but it's, you pay your own premium, and not get into the question of, well, is it, single or family? Because that's going to be a different calculation. So my first question is, can or do we can pay for the mayor? Do we want to pay the premium for a mayor?
Here's a different question. Under the previous administration, it was pretty clear that the mayor didn't have any need for the benefits and wasn't going to participate anyway. Do we have any insight as to whether this has come up and would be, and our current mayor would actually want this coverage, or is she covered somewhere else?
I believe that she would.
She would. Okay.
So then we have to assume that if she would, it would be a family coverage, because there'd be no reason to only cover herself. I would assume that she's covered by something today.
Well,
I think she has to be under law. So under the ACA, she's got to be covered by something. So it would be a matter of switching over to the public health. And do we know what the cost of that for a family would be?
the cost of the city's insurance for a family,
Yeah.
is $21,198.
Annually?
Yes.
So the question is, do we want to make it available that the mayor gets benefit coverage?
With or without premium, right? I guess it's already available. So the question isn't it?
I never did get a clear answer from HR on that.
For somewhere, I have in my notes that they are all eligible, except that the threshold hasn't been met for city council. But the mayor would be eligible.
So do you know what the current breakdown is? What I would do is in this case, mimic what the rest of the employees have. So does the city pay 100%?
Yes.
Okay. So that might be, that actually might split the difference between where Graham wanted us to be and where we are. Because essentially, effectively, what we'd be doing is providing 57,100 in value and 55 in salary and 2,100 in value and benefits should she participate.
21,000 in benefits.
21,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I would say it's out of scope for this.
Yeah, my instinct was kind of to leave this where it is, because I believe that right now the mayor could pay for. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think that's what what the code says. Hold on, I have the code right here.
Because if
Yes,
the
the
mayor
code
is able to participate, then and chooses not to at this point, then I would imagine it's because they have another insurance option that is not as expensive. So for us to then say we recommend, that would essentially bring the value of this up to what, close to $77,000.
Yeah. Here's what the code says. Any duly elected or appointed mayor or council member and the members of his or her immediate family shall be eligible to participate in any city health insurance plan, provided that the premiums shall be the sole responsibility of the mayor or council member. And then it goes on to say, until such time as the salary commission may provide for payment of premiums by the city as part of elected officials. And again, it's elected officials, apostrophe S apostrophe. So I don't know whether that means you have to do it. If you do it for one, you have to do it for all. Basically right now, anybody, she can participate. The mayor can participate. City council can't because they don't meet the threshold. The city does not pay the premiums, but we as the salary commission could decide that that will be part of the mayor's compensation. I look at this as kind of, again, looking forward. I mean, we would be setting a precedent of pretty significant value here. Because in fact, I was a little surprised by the rather low price tag on the family. Because when I was working, we were always covered by Blue Cross, and believe me, it was more than $22,000. So I think the city's done a good job in shopping this and bringing the cost down, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay there, and that could be an exploding cost. And it's so hard to predict whether when the mayor is going to want it, whether the mayor is a single or has an employed family member who provides his or her own insurance or family insurance. There are just so many permutations here that it seems hard for me to me, this seems very hard to make this fair and to avoid setting a precedent which we don't anticipate, like that number going way up.
So if I could just comment, what's in the code is not necessarily it hasn't been updated. So for whatever reason, back in 2020, the decision was not transmitted to Code Publishing. And so the decision from 2020 actually states, that they may participate provided they pay the premiums. A minimum of 50% of elected officials must be enrolled.
Mm-hmm.
So if one person wants it, then they can't have it, even if they're going to pay the whole thing, because a minimum of 50%. Now you could break that apart, versus council versus mayor, right? And you could say 50% of council members must.
But that's not clear. That hasn't clearly been done.
Right. And that's not what the code says. It never.
To me, that's even more reason to leave it alone. I don't know.
Yeah. So what we maybe could do is use this as an opportunity to recommend an adjustment to the code that allows the mayor to participate if they wish and pay the premiums. Is that something we have the authority to do?
It's really been done in the past. So we recommend clarifying.
If we do and we clean that up, then what we're doing is giving a future commission the opportunity then to have a more informed decision on how much of premiums, any or all, that the city is going to pick up on behalf of the mayor, and it would clear up that issue of whether they can participate or not.
So we'd be clarifying that the council are the ones subject to the 50% rule. Not
correct.
The mayor is independently eligible.
Correct. And then what that opens up is future commissions then now are simply deciding whether or not they want to support any or all of that premium. But at least cleans up the confusion as to whether they can participate at all.
Well, there is maybe a middle ground here too. And that would be to provide a stipend for the mayor. Maybe like the $10,000, the single premium that can be used to purchase health insurance either through the city or in the market. What do you think of that?
But we can call it a stipend, but at the end of the day, it would, if the individual is using it for purposes, for health insurance outside of the city, then it's treated like income and has to be taxed accordingly. And it's treated as basically no difference than giving them a bonus or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think that if we did that, we're just simply adding $10,000 to the relative salary of the individual.
Or
So
more like 13 or 14, because we'd have to bulk it up for taxes.
Correct. Or we don't have to. Well, we could just say this is the amount that's available to use. We're going to do 10,000, and if it's applied to the city benefits, it's a stipend, and this and that, and then it's not a taxable scenario. And if it's provided as income that's used somewhere else, I believe it would. But that's a tax question that I think we need the finance and HR people to tell us how that would be calculated. Because if it's a benefit, if it's a greater benefit, if the city says we're going to pick up on your behalf part of your benefits, then it's not taxable income. But if I give you cash to go use for benefits outside of my organization, it is a taxable benefit. So
Right.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I know how it would work in the private sector, but I don't know how it would work here.
I don't think it's done here that way.
Meaning,
Meaning we wouldn't reimburse for other health insurance.
right. So in that scenario, it just becomes a cash bonus we'd be providing, and it's just
Correct.
essentially adding to the salary total.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't think we can, necessarily it's impossible to know, who a mayor will be at any time in the future. And there are so many permutations. There's, mayor with a family, mayor single, mayor, two professionals with different policies, one on Medicare, one not. There's so many permutations that it's really hard. So I feel like we're, probably better off leaving it as is. And, again, I'm not saying kicking the can down the road, but seeing what circumstances are 2 years from now.
Yeah, I agree. And if we can at least clean up the language so a future group can then address that question more succinctly as to whether or not, as part of the salary planning process, they will pick up some or all of the benefits, that it does at least do something. It cleans that up. If we restate the language that the mayor is eligible to participate.
I recommend that city council do that. Yeah, that would be the recommendation. Because they would have to amend the city code.
No, that's what we're doing.
No, not for this purpose. This is, we're only doing it, amending the city code for the purpose of the salary.
And benefits.
Yeah, so what
this
we'd be
won't go before
doing here
council.
is our recommendation would be amending the city code to allow for the mayor to participate in the benefit plan independent of the council.
But then that's not a recommendation, that's an action. If
And that's the action. That's the action I recommend we take. Is that we clean that language up so in the future they can address it directly. There is no longer this fuzziness around whether or not the mayor is considered part of, whether it's all elected officials. It's now mayor in one category, city council in a separate category.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that we are able to amend 2.36.060, but I'll give it more thought. So as opposed to recommending it. But I think I think we're all in agreement of where we would like to see it end up, whether it's action that we can take, and maybe we refer that to the attorneys, a city attorney, to see whether we can do that independently. I'm still not convinced that that's the case. I mean, I can absolutely see that we could do it in 2.36.020, where we're actually changing the number. I'm not so sure we can amend 2.36060, but if we can, then I'm on board for doing it.
Well, that's what they did last year. They had in their decision, or the last time.
But what did they change the last time?
Well, they changed they changed the language here, although it never made it into the code. Because it doesn't read the same.
Yeah, it's quite confusing as to whether or not we have the authority to do that. However, I think regardless, we should make that recommendation.
Yeah.
That we clean that up.
So let's just ask the city attorney which way to handle it, whether it just be a recommendation or whether we actually can craft the language and submit it. So is that okay?
Well, the problem, of course, is that this won't be going before the council because it would be a conflict of interest, right? They would be voting on their own.
But it's not a change, it's just a clarification of language. It's just keeping the language the intent is just clarifying the language. Well, anyway, why don't we can leave that out there. Okay. And see, and basically decide which way to take it.
Well, we could put it in our list of recommendations, and then what's pending is how that gets done, right?
Mm-hmm. That's fine. All right, so we'll leave it recommending that be clarified. Okay, that's good. And then hopefully between now and 2 years from now, we'll know. Okay, so leaving it as it is, as far as the benefits go, leaving that as they are. The health insurance, they can participate, but they pay the freight.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's now clear that we are opening up their ability to participate. The mayor's ability to participate.
Mayor's ability to participate.
Independent of the council. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
So theoretically, what we've done here is we would have essentially paid for either a small increase and benefits in full or a large increase.
Mm-hmm.
Either way.
And that becomes the mayor's choice.
That's the mayor's choice. Yep.
Okay. Okay. And the retirement plan, I wasn't clear about that either. Do they all participate in the retirement plan, or they're all eligible to if they want to?
Yeah, the DRS has rules on if they can or not.
Okay.
And there's if they meet the threshold, then they can.
So we don't need to address that.
No, it's
Not-
it's
okay.
Yeah, not up to the salary commission.
Okay. And then just another question I had here. We talked about eliminating the fiction of the FTE status from wherever it's used. I find it in the city budget, this FTE status. It's unrealistic, but obviously we don't have the authority to mess with the budgeting process, nor do we have any interest in doing that. So should we make a statement in our decision that we find the FTE status basically irrelevant? It's worse than irrelevant. It is inaccurate. it's also a number that could change. There's no guarantee that the next mayor will work as hard as Mayor Ross does and Mayor Larson did.
Yeah, it's not reflective of true
It's not.
hours.
Okay,
Right. I mean,
so
the mayor has the choice of putting in as many hours as they want.
is there a reason for us to say that we do not believe that the FTE status is reflective of reality or relevant to our purposes, and therefore we disregarded it, or did the salary commission ever take it into account, or what is its usefulness? Should we just ignore it?
If there is a way to rewrite the language so that this role is not based in any way on, is not a time-based role. In other words, when you're the mayor, whether you work 60 hours a week or 5, it doesn't make any difference. And we don't use any time in any way relative to the job or the compensation or anything else restructured with the role. If there's a way to articulate that in sort of government speak, then I would be all for that.
I think it would be appropriate to put it in the decision that under your review, that, you know, that you did consider that and found that,
Okay,
you know,
okay, let me try to come up with
can be wordsmith.
language put in the decision itself then. Okay,
That way you guys have talked about it.
yeah.
But I'm not, you know, I don't know that we can take it out of the budget necessarily.
No.
But it is deceptive having it in there
Yeah.
because it does make people think, oh, well, she's only a quarter time mayor then, which is not true.
Which is not true. And I know, again, I don't find that the other communities pay, you know, the term is ever used. And I do think, unfortunately, it led us down, you know, can lead you down a rabbit hole too, until you finally say, well, this makes no sense, and you back away from it. So, all right, so we'll try to work that in. Okay, so if we were to summarize here, we are talking about an increase for the mayor to 55,000. An increase for council members to 10,800.
Was it 900 a month, which was what, 11,800?
900 a month. So,
Is that what you had, Michael?
Yeah, 900 a month.
900 a month.
is that 11,800? Okay, I mean, which I think is fine because,
10,008. Sorry.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, 9,000 times 12 is what I had.
10,008. The pro tem, an additional 125. No COLA. So this will apply for 23 and 24. And then 2 recommendations. One is clarifying the mayor status as independent under the 030. And then their recommendation about ignoring, or the explanation at least about ignoring FTE status because it's not reflective of reality or relevant to decision making. So that's what I think we have on the table. And then I guess the question is, do we want to take a vote in Graham's absence, or do we want to do a telephone meeting in the next day or two, lay those out and have all 3 of us present?
You know, if we could, I'm hopping on a plane in an hour or so, or a couple hours down to Arizona, but I can hop on a Zoom call like this over the next couple of days. And, you know, I think we came north of where our original proposal was. So we kind of split the difference between what Graham was looking for and what I think you and I felt comfortable with. And, you know, I think it would be better if we could all agree on it. Do we have to do it in sort of live like this, or can we do it via proxy, via email?
Well,
No, it can't be done by proxy.
yeah, I think it may be a half-hour call? Are you free? Can you free up at any point in your time in Arizona?
I can, for sure.
That would be my preference, to have everybody, in agreement here.
It's cleaner that way, for sure, and then allows us to finalize what we're essentially voting on and
Mhm.
get it cleaned up. And I think then the next steps are, it just simply gets submitted, or do we have to present it live?
Right, so typically the chair would complete the decision form, so it has to be in writing. And then that would get sent to me, and then I would send it to Code Publishing for it to be, for the code to be updated.
Okay, yeah, and Dina has very kindly given me the form to
Leave some outline.
use. Yeah,
We'll need to change it.
yeah.
Let me know if you want any help on drafting that up or something.
Yeah, you probably want to draft it and then send it to me, and then I
Yeah, and
can
you send it to everybody.
send
Yeah,
a
okay,
proposal out, and everybody can have a chance to look at it to make sure that's truly what you guys
okay,
would
that
like.
sounds good. And I'm gonna do a draft of it before we have this call with Graham, just so that it's ready to go. And so,
What are your schedules later in the week? And I'll reach out to Commissioner Ross.
why am I looking at a calculator? Oh, geez. All right, calendar. I have something every day, but let's see. Tomorrow,
Can't do it tomorrow because I have to give 24 hours. notice.
okay, so Thursday, I'm okay in the morning or late afternoon. How are you on Thursday?
Yeah, hang on, let me look at, I think Arizona's an hour before us, right? 'Cause they're not on daylight savings time. So Thursday, it looks like, so that would be, it looks like in the afternoon, I can make anything. So 2 o'clock here would be 3 o'clock. I can do anything post 2 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay,
I'll just block my calendar
and I
now.
can do is that Pacific time?
Pacific time, yeah.
I can do anything after 3.
I can do that as well.
Okay. So
Well,
put
I'm
that down as a
gonna
tentative
block-
if Graham's available.
3 o'clock. Yeah.
I can do 3, yeah, 3 to 3. We probably just need a half hour.
Yes, I think so.
I think so too. And then it'll be all Zoom. Everybody on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
And I had a hard time accessing it today, so it's not on the schedule. It's not on the calendar when it comes out. It's in the packet, right? That's, you have to go find a packet and then it's in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 o'clock on March 9th.
And this is essentially to review the decision, right?
And finalize.
Finalize. it. Okay.
All right, let me just get quick through, make sure I didn't have any lingering questions here. I think we're good. Okay. So are we ready to adjourn?
I believe so. I believe that was a very productive.
Great.
Okay, good.
All right. So it is 3:03 and we are adjourned. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you both. Appreciate it. We'll see you in a couple days.
Okay.